Hey, it's Jade here, and I cannot wait for you to listen in to my conversation with Dr. John Delony. Now, if that name is not familiar to you, you need to do your research because I can guarantee this man and his particular brand of information and inspiration will play a not so small part in changing your life and especially your relationships. Officially, we should call him a mental health expert, but you will soon see that John is way more than a brainiac with not one, but two PhDs. From everything such as crisis response to senior leadership, John Delony has been around the block when it comes to understanding people, helping people in need, and helping us to really go for a higher level when it comes to our well-being, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, you name it. I want you to listen with your heart, your minds wide open, because he has a lot to say that I think we'll learn from in terms of really re-understanding what relationships should be, understanding how important relationships are, even for those of us who sort of really like to be by themselves. He helps us to understand that even we loners need to be together. Listen in. All righty, we are here with John Delony. Excuse me, Dr.
That's what
John
Delony.
Get it right. Listen, my mom, my mother still holding out hope that I'm going to go back to get my PhD. She's probably lost hope, so she's now gone back to get hers.
Oh, yes.
She's in seminary now at 72, working on a doctorate. And what she has ingrained in me is that when you respect that title, not because of the status, but because it represents commitment, dedication, hard work. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. John Delony, who I'm so excited to have here.
Let me tell you where that I love that's her thought.
Yeah.
And here's my home.
Uh-huh.
My mom did something similar. So she went back to school at 42. She had never been to school at all. She went to Kingwood Community College right down the street from where you're at right now.
Right around the corner, yeah.
And then she went to U of H, got a PhD. And so she had never been to any school at all. She wasn't allowed to growing up. And then at 42, she graduated her PhD at 57 and then got as a tenured professor at 62, I think. And so she's been a professor forever now.
Oh my gosh.
So when Dr. Delony, my mom, and then my wife got her PhD before me.
I love it.
So these two gangster women in my life who are so much smarter. And so we had a Dr. Delony. So by the time I came along, they were like, well, it's about time. Go get the dishes, right? So it's all good.
So it's so cool. You're so self-effacing about it. You're actually Dr. John Delony with two PhDs.
That's how low my self-esteem was.
No. So I'm curious. My mom impressed upon me that it really is a symbol of something. So I'm curious, what are you committed to? What are you working hard at? And what do you feel you finally succeeded in?
I love that. So I'm committed to curiosity. I just want to know the next answer, and the older I'm getting, wisdom is, I think it was Adam Grant that mentioned this recently. Wisdom, a statement of wisdom often ends with a question mark, not an exclamation point.
That's good.
And so I love curiosity. And one of the greatest ways to fulfill my curious impulses is education, is learning new things. And I love being wrong. And I love sitting at the feet of people who are smarter than me or who have had different experiences than me, because that's the only way I'm going to learn. I like reading books by authors I know I'm going to disagree with, because my impulses, they can't be dumb. They may just have come to a different conclusion. Let's try to reverse engineer. So I'm dedicated to that idea of curiosity. And that plays in my faith, that plays in my mental health trajectory, plays in being a dad, being a husband, all those things. It's about how could I find something else? Where else am I wrong? Where else could I learn something new? So I just love that impulse.
That's good.
And then I'm committed to
what are you working hard at? What are you working hard at?
I'm working hard at being better. Let me back up and I'll So I had a professor one time, and she was a savant. She was one of those professors. It's almost like she's like an oracle,
Yeah.
right? She just dropped these moments of wisdom. She had us do an exercise, and this is in a graduate counseling class. She had us do an exercise where we didn't write down our purpose statement, if you will. We had to draw it.
Well,
She said, by the time you're at this level, when you're in the doctoral class, and quite honestly, everybody does this, we're able to hide behind our rhetorical gymnastics.
Yeah.
We can wax poetic. We can make a beautiful sentence. We can write a poem. Yeah. She said, draw a picture of it. What's it actually look like in real life? And of what's my role? What's my purpose? What am I doing here? And the picture that came in my head was me sitting on the curb next to somebody, and behind us, everything was on fire. And I had a cigarette lighter, and I was lighting their smoke for them.
Wow.
And it was this idea that I will sit with you when the wheels have completely fallen off. And I'll sit with you when everything in your life is ash, and you're asking yourself, what am I going to do next? And for a decade, I'm a loud Texas male. So oh, I know how I can help. I'll have all the answers, and I'll come in and start barking directions.
Yeah.
And now I'm working really hard to unlearn that, because what I've found is the greatest gift you can give people when they're hurting is your presence. It's rarely an answer. It's sitting with you and saying, I know, I'm sorry. And so I'm working really hard to be better at listening, to be better at showing up and being still, and not letting my insecurities try to run the show. And I'm working really hard at that. I'm working really hard at being a good dad, and I've been married for 20 years. I'm working hard at being a good husband, and I'm learning how to do that every day too.
Would you say you're succeeding in that?
If I can combine the hard work with the curiosity, then yes. When I get dogmatic and say, this is the way this is, then then I fall back into my Texas male syndrome, as I call it. That's a new syndrome. I don't know
if it's stuck in Texas there. It might have a little more breath than what you're
there you go. That's
limiting it to.
That's right.
You know, it's so exciting. I got to see you first at Dave Ramsey's event, Leadership. And I remember very well how you spoke, what you did in your keynote. But if I'm being honest, what I remember the most is our first interaction. And I remember that 2 minutes more than I remember a very powerful keynote presentation that you gave. And to me, it means that you literally practice what you preach when it comes to relationship. You know, as a speaker, it's interesting because you're more of a celebrity than I am, but we don't rank. But you know what I'm saying? We don't rank like a Beyonce, right? We don't walk in the room and have a 15-person entourage and all the things. But there's still an elevated status, and sometimes we can come into these rooms and either people are drawn to us artificially or stay away from us artificially. And what I realized right away, you came in and I could feel an intent to make an authentic connection. And that really impressed me internally. And I always tell my team, I collect awesome people. And so I knew right away, I got to collect this guy. He's got to be someone that I stay connected to. What is your philosophy around new relationship and new encounters?
Oh man. So I'm a workaholic, and I'm a recovering I'm trying to think of the right word. Books were my good friends. I used books as an excuse for not creating new relationships.
Are you a recovering loner?
In many ways, yeah. I've got my longest term friends are friends I've had for 25 years and 40 years, right?
Okay.
So and it was a revelation. I kept living in this data about when your body recognizes you're alone, it falls apart. And if I look at our culture, and we've created this, and I say that intentionally, we designed, like, architecturally, and we've engineered the loneliest generation in human history ever. And the wheels are falling off this incredible car we have because of the world we've created. And so I know the science, and then one day you can only look in the mirror so long before you realize that the rules apply to you too.
Yeah.
And so it started several years ago. You and I, like, we live in a glitch in the matrix, and it's disingenuous to not say, like, what we get to do and go share and meet new people all over the country and have some deep moments with folks. It's it's wild that this is what we get to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that when I show up to these new towns and I sit in my hotel room and just bring a stack of books, which is what I would do. I'd bring a whole backpack full of books, and I would just, and I don't watch a lot of TV, so I would show up to these things. I'd drop in and do the talk, and I know how to sing and dance on stage, and then I'd walk out.
Yeah.
And I realized I am intentionally choosing to not enrich my life. I'm intentionally choosing to die younger, quite frankly. And so it was a conscious, what if you started meeting these extraordinary people? And Jade, it was like the world opened up. And now I just can't wait to come meet new people and extraordinary people and listen to new stories and so I just love it. And here's the other thing. You mentioned our interaction. I'll never forget this as long as I live, because it's going to end up changing in many ways, how Ramsey Solutions does things. And here's why. Nothing. I bet that was the 800th time I've been on stage doing a talk.
Yeah.
When you were about halfway finished, I was like, what am I supposed to do now? I can't follow her. And then Will Gadara was with us too. And I left, and y'all two are two people. Again, we do this. We meet people in hotels and green rooms, and then we go do our thing, and then we leave. Yeah. Y'all were two of the first people that greeted me when I walked off stage in a moment of not scarcity, because it's very easy to sit back there and be like, oh, how am I supposed to follow this person? Sure. It was, oh, this is fantastic. How many people out there are going to get helped or getting served or getting loved? And there was a sense of camaraderie that I've felt with you and with Will that I have never experienced before. Wow. And I came back and said, this is how we're going to start doing this with me and my team here. That good. We're going to celebrate people and love people. So your presence, again, it's one of those things that we often don't think about. Our purpose. I want to change the world. You want to change the world? Tip your waitress really well.
Yeah. Really
Flush the toilet. Be kind to somebody, right? Do little things like greet somebody like you did with me.
Yeah.
Champion somebody, even when it's hard. And then, man, now they're going to go back to their business and change the entire operating structure. And people downstream are going to get help. So anyway.
No, that's good. That's good. It was
a holy moment for me.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for saying that. The way I responded to you afterwards was just, I'm addicted to that celebration of others that you're talking about. And I think it started once I had kids. Before that, I was probably, I've always been a nice person, but I'm the typical intensely focused, hyper competitive, excellence at all costs personality. And so when you live most of your childhood and young adulthood in that frame, you can become very tunnel visioned and not even notice there are other people in the room. And I think when I had kids and, their little random medal from karate for doing not much of anything, right? But I would explode with this pride. And I remember when my sister won Miss Houston, it was better than when I competed at Miss America. It was like, there was just this thing that felt like whatever we have in us, if we can give even an ounce of that and it creates some other spark in someone else, that to me it's a far greater reward than even when things work out for ourselves.
But we have, our whole culture is wired the other way.
Yeah.
Which is if somebody else is successful, that means they took something from you.
Gosh.
And and even those we love, even our friends and our family, it's like your buddy calls and he's like, hey, I just got promoted. And my first thought, and not mine, but our culture's first thought is, I didn't get promoted.
Yeah, how come? What happened to me?
What happened?
I was there longer. I was doing this.
We take their celebration and make it about our misery, right? And so if we can practice what you're talking about, and I'll tell you this, like this is a shapeshifter for me the last 36 months, last 3 or 4 or 5 years. What if I just woke up every day being obnoxious about celebrating everybody? And what I've found is it makes my life infinitely more joyful.
It is.
There's always another stage. There's always another opportunity. So it's not like they're running out of places.
No,
Jade's success, it elevates all of us, right? Jade writes a book and it's a bestseller. That means people are reading. We're doing great, right? So it lifts this whole thing up, man. Now, if you strike out my kid, I'm probably going to fight you in the parking lot.
But there we go. Hey, don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted, right?
No, but it's so great. I love it. I love it.
I'm thinking about, you said obnoxiously celebratory. That's probably how my kids describe me. You know, I mean, any little thing, I want to celebrate it, and then I want to psychoanalyze it and replicate it for the future. You know, and they're just like, Mom, it's really like it was just the first day of school. It's all good. It's fine. I got to my classes. You know, what you really have been delving into is kind of the state of relationships. Now, I've had this theory brewing, and it's not novel anymore. If I'd probably printed it 10 years ago, I would have been hailed a genius. But my prediction was that our connection to digital gave us this false sense of security that we were more connected than we really were. And I started noticing it when smartphones were really becoming the thing that everybody had. And I would be traveling as a young artist when I was first starting out. And we're all in the airport and we're all on these phones sitting next to, like you said, these probably pretty incredible strangers. And none of us were even making eye contact. And I started wondering if I feel like I'm connecting to all these people on this screen, but something tells me there's something a little bit fraudulent about it, because even the people that I'm liking or commenting on, I don't really even have a relationship with them anymore. But I sort of feel like I do because I just liked their comment yesterday. What do you see as kind of the state of relationships right now?
I think it's a mess. I'm an optimistic guy, and I'm all about looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. They're a mess right now. I think we're dealing with a media ecosystem that, and again, that sounds so cliche, but like the news channels, their job is not to give us information. Their job is to sell ads, and that's okay. That's their gig. But the best way they can sell ads is to get our attention. The best way to get our attention is to give us a they who's coming for us, whoever they happens to be. And that makes our bodies go hypervigilant. And we stop thinking. Literally, when your body goes into fight or flight, your thinking brain tones down a little bit, and the survival brain, the fighting and the running and the freezing, those things take over. And that's the ecosystem we live in. And at the same time, we outsourced all of our relationships onto those little digital boxes. And Jade, I could text my wife 100 times. I love you today. I love you today. I love you. I love you. I'm giving her data, but I'm not connecting with her. And we've just done that in mass, right? We uploaded our relationships onto the web without thinking about it, and our bodies are literally screaming for connection, for human beings to connect with other human beings, eye to eye contact. What a cool thing at our house, we have my wife tells me I was born in the wrong century, but my son's in 7th grade, and we got I'm not letting them have phones or anything like that. And it's been hard, and we've had to have some hard conversations. I've had some moments where I'm like, am I hurting my kids? All that, like every parent does. But now when we invite kids over, and we've got some acreages out in the woods here, so they go run and catch snakes and frogs and swim in the creeks and all that. Every kid walks in and hands their phone over, and they exhale. They hand it when they walk in. They hand it to my wife or to me, and they say, "Here's my phone," because their parents have told them, "Hey, Delonys are weird, and they don't have phones there." And then they head off into the woods with each other, and they make sticks and swords and whatever else. I don't know what they're doing out there. But they're acting like kids, and they're finally getting to breathe because they're having real connection with real people in real time in the real world. And it's just magnificent. So
it is awesome.
We've got to choose voluntarily to unplug a little bit and to reconnect with one another.
You know, you're not the only weird parent. My son is 14, and he was, I think, the second to last person in his middle school to get a phone. And we gave him that at the end of 8th grade year, because now he's being in places where he's apart from us, and we want to be able to reach him. But we had those conversations where it was just like, I don't understand. Everybody has one. My daughter, who's 8, is in a class where everyone has an iPhone. And they're 8. And she doesn't, Jay, and she knows.
You know that's madness. What are we doing?
It's crazy.
What are we doing?
You gave me confirmation because we're about to have a slumber party, and I said to her, we're going to check the phones at the door.
Absolutely.
And she looked like, oh my gosh, like my friends are never going to come back over. And I said, no, trust me, you're actually going to have a lot of fun. She went to a slumber party, and they were all on their phones.
That's right.
And she didn't have one. So she, like, whoever's house she was at, she played with the dog for most of the night. So, you know, I've never heard that phrase, outsourced our relationships. That feels like it was something that's supposed to happen way in the future when we have flying cars and AI doing everything. So the thought that we've made the choice,
we're choosing it
to voluntarily hand them over.
Here's the thing, Jade. If you're in prison and you get in trouble in prison, they only have one, like you're already in jail, right? They only have one other thing they can do. So if what they do for punishment is what?
Put you in solitary.
In solitary. And as a culture, we've just chosen that.
That's huge.
And there are psychologists across the world saying, hey, we have to declare solitary confinement as a mean of torture. And this is how we choose to live. We don't know our neighbors. We don't know the people who live behind us. We don't know the people in our apartment building above us. We don't know anybody. We just stay on these boxes. And we don't talk to our kids. We don't talk to, like, you find yourself on a couch with your spouse. You're 6 inches from them, but you're 2,000 miles away from each other.
Yeah.
He's on a phone watching a baseball game in New York. He didn't even live there. And you're looking at we're just so distant. And there's something about saying, hey, I'm not going to choose to torture myself and my family anymore.
So talk to me and some others who may say, but John, I feel you. I believe the science behind it, but I really like being by myself. In fact, when I'm around even the people I love, I need a little break. And as a person who travels a ton, I don't mind being by myself. I'll go to the movies by myself, eat dinner by myself, and I have friends who go, oh, that sounds so miserable, but I really like it. So for those of us who feel like we're built some kind of way to exist maybe more alone than others, what do we need to understand about the purpose, maybe the original purpose of relationship?
I think that, and I'm the same way as you. I love going to dinner by myself. I love going to get coffee by myself, go to movies by myself. But if I'm honest, I can only do that because I'm anchored into relationships that are bigger than me.
Wow.
And I can sound all tough, like, I like to be alone. But I get to sit, that's like having a big, huge, like jacked up dude behind me. And I'm like, I'll fight all you guys because I got that dude behind me. Right?
Yeah.
So it's
that's good.
We were designed to live in groups, to say, hey, I'm going to rest. You got the kids, you got food, you got security, you got shelter.
Yeah.
And we've bought into a lie over the last 50 years that you can be everything to yourself. You are all that you need. And that's just simply not true. Yeah. And quite honestly, I wish it was. Life would be easier.
It'd be easier to manage.
It'd be so much simpler, right? But we've got people trying to earn their way to happiness. They're trying to achieve their way. They're trying to, and you and I both know you can get the standing ovation. Yeah. And it's 30 minutes later when you're by yourself in your room, taking that breath, and you start thinking, oh, I should have said this different.
That's right.
Or I missed this one thing, or my cue didn't come on the music. And your brain will take you right back to your original state, which before, right? So the high is awesome, man, but it goes away so fast.
It does.
And so you can get that new car, and a new car is so good. Let's not lie. It's so good. And it's so much more comfortable. And then in 3 weeks, it's just your car. And so we just keep pushing these things out. The only way let me say it this way. There is no such thing as long-term behavior change. There's no such thing as long-term physiological peace. There's no such thing as long-term without other people. Full stop.
That's so good. Even as I was posing the question, I was thinking about the fact that the truth is, as much as I may like to be by myself, for me, even as a person of faith, I never actually feel alone. So if I'm not in conversation with a literal human, I'm always in fellowship for me with God, or I'm always usually thinking about something that has to do with other people that I want something for. Right.
And here's the other thing about
my audience or my family.
Yes, and I'm similar. Like a person of faith too. I feel like I'm tethered into something bigger than me relationally all the time. I think it's also important here. You know why I often, and this is I'd say up until about 5 years ago when I had some radical transformations in my relationships. I didn't know what a boundary was. I had put expectations on relationships in my life that made relationships awful.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to say, hey, that makes me uncomfortable. I didn't know how to say, hey, can you explain that? Or I'm choosing to not go be a part of this. And so my relational engagements were uncomfortable. Or maybe I worked at an abusive place or a toxic work environment, whatever. So relationships were poisonous. And when I started learning about my responsibility in developing relational boundaries and then having to grieve some losses of relationships, then relationships became a safer place. And I suddenly found myself literally overnight becoming a lot less introverted and wanting to spend time with people again and wanting to, getting away from a relationship, I didn't need to escape them anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to be in them because I had created a context where I could survive in them. Right.
And you'd extracted the negative connotations from past relationships that we sometimes carry with us and our past behaviors. On the flip side of that, I think one thing I learned maybe 5 to 8 years into marriage, as a person of, let's say, high expectation, high demands, I figured it out that even if I'm married to my soulmate, it was unfair to expect him to meet all of my expectation and demand. And that the more I might like to talk politics or world religion or have these big, deep discussions. My husband's like, that's not my jam. Like, that's not where he lives. And I would get frustrated because if you really love me, you'd be into everything I'm into and learn and that's so false. And I was actually creating a sense of not being fulfilled. I was causing that because I was imposing upon him to really become something or develop interests that he'd never promised he was going to become a political buff after we got married, right? So tell us more about those expectations and, what should we expect from relationships and maybe what have we gotten wrong about what we expect from relationships?
Yeah, the great, your marriage sounds a lot like my marriage, by the way. Jeez Louise. I think it was the great Esther Perel that talks about, you used to get married for one of two reasons. Yeah. It was a political move or a financial move for your parents. They got many goats, right? Or they got to ship somebody off. It was a move for them. Or you found somebody else in your village and you're like, hey, we're probably going to die at around 30.
Yeah, let's do this.
Do you want to do misery together?
Yeah.
And let's have 14 kids, 4 of which will survive. And we're going to run a little farm until one or both of us. So it was just to get through misery together.
Yeah.
And then as we've moved through time quicker and quicker, we can fast forward, we can have a long discussion about it, but the reasoning of marriage changed. Like the purpose of marriage changed. And it was a shock to me when I was writing my last book. I was talking to my mom. She got married in 1970. It was against the law for her to go get a checking account by herself.
Yeah.
She had to get my old man to do it.
That's right.
And now they're in their 70s. And she could file a no-fault divorce right now and so the world they've had to navigate from, you're not allowed to get a mortgage without me I don't need you for nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So the rules have shifted. And then Renee Zellweger and Tom Cruise pop up and it's like, you know what? You complete me. This idea that this one person will still be attractive, will still be into you, you'll still be intimate into your 90s. By the way, you have to be a co-earner and a co-household helper and a co-parent. And we've just put all of our existential angst into one person.
Wow.
And we used to have a bonding, a common bond with a religious faith. We pulled the tether on that. We had a common bond with the government that was looking out for us. We pulled the thread on that. We're so existentially angsty, and we've dumped it all on our partner and said, you gotta hold this all for me. And our marriages are crumbling under the weight of obnoxious, unrealistic expectations. Can't do it all.
That's your next book, by the way, Existential Angsty. That's a whole thing. That's a whole
it's just a way of being,
discussion.
Right?
But when I think about that angst, earlier we were just talking about kind of the state of relationship and this false sense of security where digital media is concerned. And I've noticed, I guess, and I don't like to put labels on any generation, but I will say I've noticed mostly now in society, people are taking on angst more easily. What I call adopting other people's angst, other people's activism, other people's stuff. And so I find myself saying, listen, it's okay to have a cause. Just make sure it's the cause that you've been called to and that you're not adopting and then injecting into yourself stuff that you aren't made to carry, that you aren't built to speak on, that you weren't created to fight for in this season. It's a tricky season that we're navigating as a nation, as a society, and as a world. Your current book, Own Your Past, Change Your Future. Why that book now?
Probably threefold. One, the world doesn't need another relationship or mental health book. There's a bunch of extraordinary books out there. But coming out of the academy, I worked in higher ed for 20 years, and coming to work here for a media company, right? I realized that I've been working with some of the most brilliant, thoughtful, kind people trying to solve big problems. I'm talking about really phenomenal scientists and researchers and humanitarians. And I'll just speak for myself. I realized when I got here, I was talking past people. Like I can have all the theories and know all the ins and outs of cognitive behavioral therapy and how it goes from depressive disorder, major depressive disorder. That's all fine and good. She's just a single mom with 2 kids and she just needs the anxiety to stop. Or that guy's an over-the-road trucker with 3 sons and he just wants to be a little bit better dad. And his dad disappeared when he was 6 and he didn't even know what day it is, right? So I realized I was talking past people. And so what didn't exist out there was a book that was really me sitting across the table from somebody with some nachos and, just saying like, hey, tell me what's going on. So it was really, it was me trying to write a mental health book that I could actually understand, right?
Wow.
The second one is I wanted to put down on a piece of paper for my son and my daughter, hey, your old man had his own trajectory here. And before I get too old and forget all this stuff, I need you to know that like there was times I was frustrated. There was times I was going through my own stuff. There was times I was really anxious. There's times I was medicated for my anxiety. It was so deep. And I want you to know that I was carrying stuff. It wasn't on you. And I'm sorry for those seasons that you felt like you were having to carry dad's stuff for him. And then the third one is this. It's more of a global concern I have. We've been given 2 paths, Jade. We've been given a path that you are the worst thing that ever happened to you. You will always be the worst thing you ever did. And however you feel that's the GPS map for you. So whatever you feel, these ideas of like, you're going to create your truth as you go, just feel your way into the future. That's path number 1. And then the other path is a response, and it's equally insane, is if you have a feeling, it's because you're a coward, because you're weak. Suck it up, grind it, crush it, kill it. And this book, like both of those are nonsense. Yeah. And so this book is really like a new third way. I don't care if you're a Navy SEAL. I just spent 3 hours with a Navy SEAL, right?
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a Navy SEAL. I don't care if you are a single mom, a stay-at-home. I don't care who you are. You have to feel, and you have to ask yourself that one scary question. What am I going to do now? Right? What comes next? And how am I going to participate in healing this, either for myself, generationally, whatever that looks like? And we've got to have a new third way where it's both and, right? And so that was the point of the book.
Oh man, it's so powerful. I mean, we could have a literal hour-long discussion on each of those points. I love talking about feelings and how we've allowed ourselves to either be absolutely absorbed by them, and we can't see our way around them, or we've ignored them. And I believe, like you said, there's another path which for me is about interpreting that, if God in his all-knowingness hasn't made any mistakes, he gave us emotions for a reason. So they're not bad, right?
They're signals. They're great.
Signals. Yes. There's such good signals if we learn how to read them. And so I think
it's like driving down the highway and you see the sign that says airport and you just stop there.
Yeah. That's good.
Like, that's not the airport. It's just telling you where it is.
It's just telling you where to go. Just now I know, make this right turn, and I'm going to end up in the right spot, but I've got to keep going.
I got to keep going.
I love that on your show, on Dr. John Delony's show, you have callers and you answer their questions in real time. What are they asking about? Is there a common theme you see recurring?
I think common theme number one is, especially when the show first started, people were calling and saying, "Hey, I just cheated on my husband, and I don't know how to, I'm going to tell him. How do I have this conversation?" Or, "I got frustrated with my son last night, and what started as a hey, turned into a squat, turned it into I hit him too hard, and now I don't know what to do." Or, "Is my kid's teacher crazy?" Right? So I found myself, Jade, asking, I would laugh. I would say, "Why are you calling me?"
I'd be like, "Oh, look at there. All our time has run out."
I'm a podcaster. But it was more like,
wow.
Like, because in my life, if I did one of those things, I call my community, I call one of my close friends.
Yeah.
And to a person, the answer was, "John, I got nobody." And so a recurring theme over and over is people are lonely and they got nowhere to go. The second recurring theme is there's so much noise out there that there is just an infrastructure designed to keep you from feeling stable. For women, it's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a strong professional, somebody's presenting you with data and truth on why you are failing your family and failing your community by not going home. And if you're a stay-at-home mom, someone's presenting you with what a failure you are for.
And how you're not doing more. Yeah.
Right. There's no way to win.
Mm-hmm.
And people are calling saying, I'm not interested in going forward. Like I'm just going to check out. I'm not going to take my own life. Right. Mm-hmm. In the nerd world, we call it long tail suicide. I'm not going to kill myself. I'm just going to, you know what? Netflix is just going to start the next show for me. And then when that series is over, they're going to say, "You might like," and they're just going to crank it up and start it for me.
That's it.
That's right. Good. And Jeff Bezos just going, you know what? You might want to buy this based on all this other stuff. You're probably going to want to buy this. I'm like, I'll just buy that too. Yeah. And so we can opt into lives of quiet desperation, right? And we just fade out. And I think people feel like they're crazy. Probably the most common question I get, if I was to distill it all down, is a newly married couple. They've been married about 5 years. They have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and their sex life is a mess. Their intimacy life's a mess. They're not sleeping.
Yeah.
And they're calling, wondering what's wrong with them. And I'm often like, nothing. It just is. It's like asking somebody at mile 17 of a marathon, "Why do my feet hurt?" Well, you're running a marathon, and in just 7 more miles, it's going to be cool, right? And it's just helping people feel a little less alone, a little more social norming, right? You're not crazy. This is a season. It's going to pass. And here's some things you can do during this season to make it be a little more joyful, right?
You know, as I listened to you with that example, what you're countering as a person that they are calling for the answers is this image too, right? If they might be newly married and they're watching a Netflix series where the couple has been together 20 years and they get it on 3 times a day and they have 6 kids, right? And the wife is gorgeous and the husband goes to the gym.
And they're doing it in different rooms in their 7,000 square foot house,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Yes, so I can see then how the question is, well, what's wrong with me? Because I'm not any of that. I don't even have one of those things, right? That's how you start to think. You see that I don't have any of that. Right. So I can imagine then that quiet desperation, which is also rooted in this toxic comparison that we have made a lifestyle in many ways. And again, thank you, social media. But I always say, you know, I believe all the tools that we have were originally created with a purpose that is good. So I watch how you use social media. How has that been a place of connection for you? An outlet. I feel like you have a relationship with your social media. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I had no social media before I took this job.
Wow.
So the first time I ever got an app was in 2020. Never had
You really are old school.
Yeah. Well, I just worked with these students, and it was just destroying their lives. Yeah. Everything about it was destroying their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just opted out of the system. And so in 2020 I got it, and I'll never forget. I was about 9 months in probably, and I was in my closet in my bedroom with with the door shut, sitting down, scrolling Instagram, and my kids are running around out in the living room behind me. And I started laughing, and I was like, "Oh, well played, Zuckerberg. You got me too. You got me."
That's good.
I played around with cocaine, and now I need it. Right?
Here it is.
It was what the way I've decided to use it is this. Most of the time I'm posting something, it's a note to myself. It's a conversation I'm having with myself. And my wife was very, very wise when I took this job. And she said, because I'd worked my whole career to get where I wanted to be in higher ed. I got my dream job at the Dream University. It was awesome. Everything was laid up, and it really put into motion the next 20 years of our life, right? Our kids are going to go to college for free. Everything's going to be lined up. And so then it was like, hey, what if we quit all this to go be a YouTuber? What do we think about that? What do we think about that, family? And my wife said something so wise. She said, you have to be all you.
That's right.
Because if you create an image, at some point it runs out of gas.
That's good. You married a really great.
She's super wise, and she also knows she married somebody with that just can sing and dance with the best of them. But here's the thing. She said, and this is the other half of that. If this doesn't work, you're going to have to go to bed at night knowing America doesn't like you. Are we cool with that? And we both went in going, yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't think they like me now, so I think we're all good. So these notes are notes to myself, or they're me processing a thought out loud. They're not me trying to perform for an Instagram audience.
Oh, that's good.
And I think that's where the connection has become so wild is I'm not trying to put something out there that I think other people are going to like. It's me saying, hey, I hear a friend start to tell a story. I've done it to you a few times, Jade, in this interview. A friend starts to tell me a story and it's awesome. And I just go right over the top of them with, oh yeah, well, here's my awesome thing on top of your awesome thing. And I get so frustrated, and I'll say to myself, hey, next time somebody's talking and you have a cool idea, just shut your mouth. And I'll post to that. It's a note to myself. And then that's why I think it's resonating in the way it is.
And for the record, I haven't felt that moment. There's definitely when you're with people and you feel they just grab the mic. I really do feel like what we've engaged in has been a true exchange. And so my challenge to you is to also believe and trust that when you find a point of relevance, because you have spent a lifetime now really understanding relationship, that you can trust that the exchanges you're making, even when they're points of relevance, oh my God, I have a story that matches or a story that mirrors, is also serving as confirmation for the person you're speaking to.
That's awesome.
Because
Thank you.
not at one moment did I feel, and I have had those interviews where it's like, I'll just take my headphones off and let you take this away. So it wasn't that. I just, awesome. It's wonderful for me to see people walking out, like your wife said, right? If you're really truly bringing all of yourself to every single table, every single time, it really is what it is in the best way. Because you don't have to apologize for being you. You may apologize for something you said or something.
I'm gonna say something dumb. I'm gonna not express. Yeah.
But you know where the heart of it. If you can always say, no, I know what the heart of this was. I'm going to end now with something I saw at the end of your page on the Ramsey site, and it says, "You're worth being well." What does that mean? And for people listening in, tell them what that means for them.
I'll say this in a non-sugar-coated way. Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
I think most of us hate ourselves.
Oh, wow.
We hate our bodies. We don't think we look right. We hate the thoughts in our head. We don't think that we should be thinking that thought. I shouldn't have thought he was good looking. I shouldn't have wondered what I hate the fact that I'm uncomfortable in church. I just want to go to bed. I'm so tired. I hate all these extracurriculars I signed my kid up for. I think we are living in a culture where we are at war with our own bodies. We're at war with ourselves. And it's when I was sitting down with police officers and military guys, when I would look at them and say, dude, you are worth a good night's sleep, that they would just start weeping. Because they'd never considered that before. Like, dude, you've been married for 10 years. You are worth a wheels off, reckless sex life. Bananas. You're worth that. So stop drinking a 30-pack every weekend, right? So it's people, and I'll throw myself in, like, we have got to a place where we have forgotten that we're worth waking up in the morning and having coffee because we want to, not because we have to.
Yeah.
We're worth saying, I don't know. We're worth saying, I was wrong. I don't know. And not fighting all the time.
Oh, that's good.
And so it's just, when people ask me about mental health diagnosis and all, we can go down those roads, but let's just back way up and just say, hey, you're worth being well. Let's start there. And if you will admit that you're worth being well, then we can talk about the right diet and the right workout program and the right mental health program and the right whatever. But it all starts with, you're worth the work.
So in this time together, we just heard 2 of your next books, Existential Angst and You're Worth Being Well. All necessary, so please get to writing them right away.
On it.
Now, I've so much enjoyed our time together. I knew I would. I knew that if we had that much connection in the first few minutes in meeting each other in Orlando, that we'd have a lot more to explore. I am sure we'll be talking many times into the future.
Oh, can't wait.
And connecting on many levels. I thank you for the gift that is in you and that you have agreed and determined to unleash it. And thank you for how much you care about us, perfect strangers. Thank you for how much you care.
Well, thank you for your hospitality. And it is I've met a lot of folks, and it's rare that I go home and I tell my wife, I just had a before and after moment. I was this way before, and I'm going to be different this way now. And that it's like you said, it's meeting somebody for 5 minutes and realizing that's how I want to walk through the world. Now I've got a new picture of what joy and peace, and just mechanically, I thought I'm pretty arrogant. I think I'm pretty good on stage. And
You're
then
awesome.
You see Jade up there, and you're like, well, that's cool. Going back to grade school
Going
now.
back to square one, huh?
Listen, your whole the end of your thing, the technology cut out, and you just were like,
huge part of my presentation.
No, it's the whole I mean, you can feel the whole thing building.
It's the whole
and it's
trajectory. It's like, oh, okay, that's not going on today. All right.
But dude, you did some kind of like somersault karate kick out of that moment.
Yeah.
And it was something to behold, right? And it's one of those before and after moments. It's like, okay, game on, leveled up.
I will pull that full circle and tell you how that moment worked. My initial career was simply as a classical concert pianist, so simply as an artist. And you get used to playing for so many audiences and different types of people in the audience. But it was the switch that you're talking about and that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, from impressing people and being competitive to really caring about what they were getting. And I remember on that stage in Orlando, while talking to you guys in the audience, internally having a conversation and saying, okay, we can either sit in pride here and try to have the original experience that you planned, or we can be in this moment and remember that we're here to make an impact that's unforgettable. So how do we teach out of this moment while it's happening and move on
in front
from
of
the image
3,000
in your head?
people? Yeah.
So, it was if I can just stay connected to this room, we're going to be okay. If I can give them
But
what
Jade,
I
it
know
was
intended.
magic.
Thank you.
It was magic. It was the point that I was sitting by Dave, and I was like, what am I supposed to do now? How do you follow it when somebody wrecks their car and they still win the Formula One race? Yeah. Because they, right? So it was incredible. And it's one of the great honors of my career to have gotten to share a stage with you, man. It's so awesome. And to spend some time with you. And I can just feel Houston coming to the microphone. It makes my soul feel good.
Yay. We're going to do it again. And
Love
speaking of just incredible moments, thank you for spending this incredible moment with me, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you.